I'm Jayne McGlynn. I'm a partner at DWF. I went to a grammar school in Yorkshire, Hetman Grammar. I then went to Oxford, where I read law at St Hilda's College, so I was a Hildebeest, if that means anything to anyone watching. After that, I travelled. I went to be an English teacher in Japan and then Korea. And then, before going to Nottingham, I took a year studying international law and European law in Brussels. I think one lesson that I learned early on in my career was to do with mistakes. And I still think that's one of the most important lessons that has shaped my career and how I kind of try and teach junior lawyers. If you make a mistake, or even if you think you've made a mistake, you need to own it. Put your hand up. Don't think, oh, it's too late now, the advice has gone to the client. Because I think often when you're dealing with clients and colleagues and anybody in your business or your everyday life, it's not if you make a mistake, it's how you handle it that really creates an impression on people. And if you're very straightforward and say, actually, I think we made a mistake there, this would be a better path or this would be a better option, people really value that because situations change, you get more information, and sometimes, you're working under such high pressure, high intensity that you've got to make decisions quickly. And just when you've had the time to reflect, you think, actually, there might be a better way to do this. And so allowing yourself to course correct, own your mistakes, and just be upfront with people. Clients really appreciate it, and so do colleagues. I started at a small firm that went on to become Cooley, and then I moved to Slaughter & May on qualification. And after a few years there, I moved to Morgan Lewis. It's a very large American firm that didn't really have a footprint in the UK, so weren't well known. And to be honest, I was really lucky that I feel that I was given a huge amount of responsibility as a mid-level. And so I feel that leading deals, being trusted with clients, having a lot of freedom really allowed me to step up into the kind of technical elements of the path to partnership quite early on. And what I learned was you need to kind of act like the role you want. So the path to partnership for me was, right, where do I want to get? What do those people do? How can I do it now? So that you're almost doing that role before you're at that role. And so a lot of senior associates are really great technicians, but the big step up to partnership is the client care, being the first part of call when clients come to you for stuff that's way outside your area of expertise because they trust you, and then kind of thinking about the business development elements of your role. So that's really the key thing for partners. How are you driving the business? How are you bringing in money to the firm? And if you can start thinking about that as a senior associate and start practicing those principles then, it will really help you get to partnership a bit quicker because law is a business and it's not what the firm can do for you and how you get to partnership. It's really what can you do for clients and the firm to get there. And I think that's the kind of critical path to get to partner. I made partner in 2020 and it was not necessarily the best time to be going for partnership. It was during COVID. So everything about my application was remote. Everything about the key things in my business plan had to be pivoted from, I do lots of events, that's how I do BD. Oh, I'm holding them online. And so I had to kind of change my business development strategy from in-person events, which I love and I adore, to how I could weave that into the remote environment. And so I think it just showed me that you can pivot, but it was a very difficult time to do it. I think the biggest difference between being a senior associate and a partner is a senior associate, you might be by that point running deals. So you might actually be in charge of a deal, it might be supervised by a partner, but you might effectively be doing everything for a client on a particular matter. But the step up to partnership is then really, okay, well, I can run these matters, I'm a great technician, I can do client care, but then it's how am I bringing in more business to the firm? How am I developing this client relationship? How am I looking after that client so that they really stay with our firm? And it becomes much more of a long-term vision in terms of like the strategy as to maintaining your business, because you've got to look after the clients you've got, but then seeing where the market might go, seeing opportunities to grow the business as well. I think when you make the step up to partner, you're really focusing much more on the strategy of the business. So not just the individual matter or the individual client. You're thinking, I work as a corporate partner. How are we going to expand this team? How are we going to make sure that we've got work coming in, not just next quarter, but the quarter after that? And where do we really want to be seeing our business and our practice develop in 5 years, 10 years time? And what trends do we think are going to happen in the market? How can we respond to those? Do we think there's going to be new areas of work? What do we think client needs are and how are they going to change? And so it's really thinking about the business strategy and then how you can bring that down, put it into practice, how you can communicate that to your team. Because it's one thing the partner's thinking about this, but you want to be pushing it down so everybody is on the same page and they understand the direction and the why of the business, because you have a much more engaged team and they're also like a flywheel. The partners can do it, but if you can get all of the team understanding the business strategy and how you're going to grow, it just amplifies everything. My area of expertise is cross-border M&A. And what that means in simple English is I help people buy and sell companies. I might help them do joint ventures. I might help with a company or a business reorganisation, and it's usually got a cross-border element. So sometimes I might do a UK company buying a UK company, but usually it's got a global element to it. And I used to do emerging markets. I used to do a lot of Russian and CIS work. I've done a lot of Middle Eastern work, which helped me be really creative because a lot of the economies and the rules are not as set in stone as they are in Western markets. And so that helps you be a more creative lawyer. In my practice today, I work with a lot of American clients coming out into the world, and they might be buying a business or investing in a business or disposing of a business in the UK or the EU or the Middle East. And so quite often it's not an English focus, it's just an English law umbrella for the business activity that's going on underneath. I think when I realised that what makes me a successful partner is actually just being me and leaning into that, that's when it really flourished. I'm not polished, I'm not fancy. I look really fancy on paper, Oxford, Brussels, Slaughter & Maid, big American firm. But actually when people meet me, I'm not like that. You can tell by my accent today, for example. I don't use big words, I'm very informal. But one thing I do have is I'm very direct. And so I say, look, I'm in Yorkshire, I'm going to tell you how it is. And I found that actually clients like that. They like cutting through a lot of the noise and getting to what's really important. And I think with a lot of advisors, sometimes you're scared to be the bearer of bad news. I lean into that and clients like it. And I think my other skill is probably strategy. And that comes from the only thing that I think it takes to be a good partner, which is being a lifelong learner and being curious. Because if you're curious and if you're a lifelong learner, you can learn anything. You can learn how to be more charismatic, and we get taught that because lawyers are not always charismatic. You can learn to be a better public speaker. You can learn an entire sector. There's some sectors that I'd never worked in, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got a pitch for this next week. And you can just read up on something a whole weekend, reach out to your colleagues, friends you know in the area, and just learn it. So if you're a lifelong learner, there's nothing that stops you. And I think that's really the only skill that you need. And that's just becoming so much more important because we're just in this era of like rapid change. And so if you're a lifelong learner, you can keep up with what's going and see what's coming ahead. And so I think that's really the only skill that you need. And I think, remembering that and leaning into what's going to make you special and what's unique about you is how you can thrive in law. And the best partnerships, the best teams, the best companies, they're made up of different people and with all these different skill sets. And so I don't think there's any one thing apart from curiosity and lifelong learning. There's lots of different things that make a great partner, and everybody's got something that makes them great, and it's working out what makes you great and what can be of use to your colleagues in your firm. I think it's thinking about what the firm needs, where there might be a gap, and seeing a path, how you can kind of fit into that, and then going all out. So you can almost treat your path to partnership as like a BD training for when you need to be doing what you can do internally in the firm for externally of the firm. So if you think about when you want to be a rainmaker, you're like, how can I make my clients look good? What can I do to help them? What do they need? But if you apply that principle to your colleagues, it might be a senior associate if you're a junior associate. It might be a partner if you're a senior associate. What can I do that will help people? It's showing that you can bring something to the business. And so it's thinking about what would help your colleagues in the same way as you might think what would help my clients. So it could be, wow, that partner's got this amazing niche. They've got this deep expertise. How could we maybe tell people about that? They may not have time to write an article or give a training or something like that. Can you do something that they could co-author with you and put it out there? Can you think about some of the needs their clients might have? Could you suggest a BD event, their juniors with our juniors or mid-levels, and just thinking about kind of different things that could be helpful to the business? I think when you're a junior lawyer, you think, I need to get experience in this. I want to get exposure to these clients. And as you get more senior in the firm, you need to be thinking of what can I do instead? So you're kind of, what will help me get to that point, and then what can I do to help others? And it's that inflection. And as you get more senior, you need to focus on the giving more. What do we get to be responsible for as a partner that define whether or not the firm is successful as a business? I think the number one thing is client care. So the clients that you have, making sure that they have a really good experience with you, whether it's being responsive, it's absolutely nailing anything they come to you for, seeing what are the needs they have. And so making sure that your clients have a really great experience, how you can collaborate with your colleagues to make sure that each client feels that they're totally looked after and they're your number one client. It may not be true, but every client needs to feel that. I think the really exciting part about being a partner is you kind of get so much freedom. You can think, well, I see that there's a gap in the market for this type of advice, this type of legal product, or something that we could offer to this type of client. And if you've got an idea, and you can do this lower down the firm as well, if you've got an idea and you can productize it or see how it could generate revenue for the firm and benefit the clients, you can run with it. And it's that level of freedom over where you want to take your career that as you get more senior, it's just dynamite if you're curious and passionate about, progressing in law. I think tech is really transforming how M&A lawyers work. I think for a long time we thought we're special, this is not really going to touch what we do, but what we're seeing is every single area of what I do has got tech potential. So for an M&A deal, what I do, the life cycle might be a client might sign an NDA with someone, first of all. That's now can be automated. You can give clients access to tech where they can just type in a few details, it'll spit out a great NDA. Then you might go, for example, to due diligence. Due diligence has changed so much in the past couple of years. Even 2 years ago, I asked clients, why are we not using more tech in DD? And the general answer was, it's not good enough, we don't trust it. But the acceleration in accuracy and what we can do with it and how lawyers are trained in using it, every DD exercise we do now, we've got a first review of tech, then it's a human review, and it might go back and forth with some kind of fine-tuning of the prompting. And sometimes we'll do a tech review without much human analysis for clients who want to get to a go, no-go decision much quicker with lower legal fees. So that's one area. Then when we come to negotiation, you can spar with AI. So if you've got Lagora, you can say, I think this is where we should be pitching this client argument. What do you think? And it will give you the pros, cons, an aggressive, a compromise, and just so many different options so that you can almost make sure that you're not limited by what's in your head. It's just super quick. While you're drafting documents, suggestions on how to improve clauses, a first-line review of done by AI, it's just phenomenal in terms of what can be done. In terms of project management, so closing and managing a closing for any trainee or junior lawyer is a nightmare. That's getting so much better. Now we can load documents onto a platform. If you make a change in one document that needs to be replicated across 50 documents, 200 documents, the tech can take care of it. So what I'd like to think is that tech is enabling us to do a lot more work much faster with greater accuracy. And the best thing, it's taking a lot of drudgery out of what we do. So hopefully junior lawyers will have a much happier training period as they come through law. I think there's one area of the market where we're really seeing tech be super important to our client pitch, and that's when we're dealing with hyper acquirers. And what I mean by hyper acquirers, they're clients that are doing acquisition after acquisition after acquisition, so 5 or more in a year. And these clients are really focused on how you can make the process of M&A as effective as possible. And by effective, I mean you want to have as little friction as possible, and you want to make the process really streamlined, and you want to be able to execute very quickly. And so we're really thinking about novel ways of using tech for the hyper acquirers. And so we can try something because they also tend to be clients that have a higher tolerance for risk, and they're early adopters. And so combining tech with those types of clients is really powerful because they'll try the new stuff, you're doing it again and again, and the feedback loop is really, really quick. And so it's this tinkering mindset of like constant improvement of how we can do it better for them. So it might be, we do one negotiation, we say, we wasted way too much time at this point. How can we take that friction out of the M&A process? And so we might tinker with the LOI, the letter of intent. We might change what we ask for in due diligence, and we just reposition ourselves so that the process goes smoother. And the way that tech's helping with that is, I can say to Copilot, or I can say to Legora, look at this suite of documents. Where did we spend too much time? And it can kind of say, well, you spent a lot of time negotiating these points. You spent a lot of time trying to figure out a solution for this due diligence issue. And then thinking about that and just making your process smarter and smarter and smarter. And because you're doing it so often with the hyper acquirers, it's just, you become part of their team's M&A memory muscle, and the process just flies so much better. Where is my dream holiday destination? Look, I'll be honest, one of the advantages of being a lawyer is that you get to travel quite a lot with work, but also with play. So I had lots of holidays, even if it was just for weekends. That's one thing I've never scrimped on, so I've been all over the world. But the one place I really want to go is Palau. It's really hard to switch off as a lawyer. Like, a lot of us have brains that just don't go quiet. And that's what often makes us great lawyers. But I think you need to have a rest and a reset. And so I learned that diving was what did that for me, because if you're not thinking about your breathing, if you're not kind of focused on the present and, principles of mindfulness, you just can't do diving very well. And so that became my passion that got me through my career in law. And the place I really want to go to is Palau. I want to go to the Jellyfish Lake. It's just a magical lake that's full of non-stinging jellyfish. The only downside is, though, it's like a 17-hour flight and it's filthy expensive. I've been getting my kids ready for that, so I take them snorkeling. They now can do open water snorkeling in the sea. So the next step when they're a bit older is diving, and I'm prepping up to that.